On day 6, we're going to be hanging around the old city most of the time. We will drive to the Mount of Olives and look over there for a group picture. Some of us will walk down the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane, or the Church of All Nations. Then we'll head over to the old city and walk through the Arab cemetery to the St. Stephen or Lion's Gate, go to the Pool of Bethesda and St. Anne's Church, and then come out and ride over to Mount Zion. There at Mount Zion, we'll go to the upper room and David's tomb. Then we'll go in through the Zion Gate, see the Cardo, Hezekiah's Broad Wall, the Western Wall, Wilson's Arch, and go over to the teaching steps before heading back to our hotel for the night. It's going to be a gloriously clear day as we get ready, and as we drive along the Mount of Olives, over there is the old city and the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount. So much Bible history has happened just in the places that we're looking right now. It's amazing to think at how rich this area is. Over there is the upper room. And there's the teaching steps we'll be at later today. There's the Al-Aqsa Mosque we'll go see in a few days. And the Dome of the Rock. The Golden Gate and St. Stephen's Gate we'll walk in later today are all here. There's St. Peter and Gallicantu where we were yesterday. And again the upper room up on the hill. It's a beautiful sight. It's almost mesmerizing in so many ways. The typical sight you would have if you think about Jerusalem. And over there, those are the southern teaching steps, one of the places Jesus was sure to have been. It's just so hard to take it all in. Now, some of us are going to take a taxi to the bottom of the hill, and others are going to walk down the route that Jesus would have taken on Palm Sunday. But we'll all meet at the Garden of Gethsemane. Walking down the Mount of Olives is not easy. Jesus rode down this on a donkey. And there's tombs everywhere. There's a light in each one of those, an Israelite. And they put stones on top of them like we put flowers. Say the stones last longer. There's several churches along the way. The first is Dominus Flavus, the Lord wept. It is built in the shape of an upside-down teardrop with tear flask on each corner and reminds us that Jesus wept over the city of Jerusalem and would love to have taken them under his wings. There was a 4th century Byzantine monastery here, and this is part of the floor from that. The present structure was built in 1953 by Barlusi, and there's a cemetery nearby with a 1st century tomb and ossuaries or bone boxes in it. Next down the hill we come to the Church of Mary Magdalene. It's very rarely open. It was built in 1885 by Tsar Alexander III and is beautiful on the inside and out. Next down the hill is the Church of All Nations. We'll see the top of it first from back as we come down the hill. This church marks the Garden of Gethsemane, the place where Jesus prayed and wept. It is a home to many old olive trees. It's almost impossible to kill an olive tree. Olive trees will grow back shoots from their roots called netzers. So the roots are probably in these trees dating back to Jesus. But the above ground part was probably cut down by the Romans in 70 AD. And this is where he prayed in this garden. Gethsemane means the place of the olive pressing. And there was an olive press here in a cave nearby. We'll look at it in a little bit. It's a beautiful garden today, but at the time of Jesus it was probably just an olive orchard. The first church built here was by Helena in 380, and it was destroyed by an earthquake. It's the green. And then the red was built by the Crusaders later, and now the present day church is from 1919. It's called the Church of All Nations because many nations donated money, and this is the U.S. monument to the money we gave. The center of this church is a rock that is in front of the altar. It's said that this is where Jesus prayed. We don't know if that's true or not, but it's as good a place as any to remember that. It happened somewhere right in this vicinity. And out in the garden there, wildlife, Lebanon lizards mating, and erythematous lizards also. We're going to be going over to the private garden. Next by is the cave of betrayal and the tomb of Mary. Let's look at those even though we didn't go inside it. This cave has been marked since the early 300s as a place where Jesus and his disciples stayed. Here is an olive press, the only one on the Mount of Olives. Remember the place of the pressing? Next door is the tomb of Mary. Greek Orthodox, Armenians, Coptics, Syrians, Abyssinians, and even Muslims worship here to remember Mary, the mother of Jesus. It's actually the crypt of an old Byzantine church, and downstairs this is her tomb. And now we head into the garden for a little private quiet time and our morning devotion. Unfortunately, because we're using the whispers, it's very hard to hear the devotion on this video. And that is also true of almost all the lectures that our guide is doing, so that's why you're hearing none of them hardly.
And it said, do not be surprised by suffering, but rather rejoice as you share Christ's sufferings. Don't be ashamed of your suffering, but keep doing good and be glad when his glory is revealed. We think about it. The Bible tells us, therefore, by the mercies of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, which is your spiritual service of worship. So when we think about Jesus' mercy on us, we have much reason to praise. And we're going to sing a song, and y'all are going to sing a song too. It's called In the Garden. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that song before. All right. So Linda's going to get us started.
I come to the garden alone, where the dew still on my shoulders, and the voice I hear falling on my ears.
So you did come to the garden. You know Jesus came here about 2,000 years ago and prayed. I think he was under a lot of stress then, but finally decided to yield to the will of his Father. It was sure a steep walk down to me, but was not that view from the top of the Mount of Olives truly spectacular? Now after a little worship and so quiet time you're heading off for more adventures. Will you ever see enough? Tracing Jesus' time in Jerusalem is a very busy thing to do. I would recommend you go to see the place where he had the Last Supper and also visit the Western Wall. They are both good places to pray in, but the best place is right here with me where Jesus prayed. If you have time, spend some time down at the southern end of the Temple Mount and walk on the street and steps that he walked on when he was here 2,000 years ago. Have a good night's sleep because you have a lot more to see tomorrow.
And now the bus has carried us around to the northern end of the old city, and we're walking along the wall. We'll make the corner and walk through the Muslim cemetery here. Along the way we noticed fairly trashy. Was this a box for a casket? Soon we're arriving at St. Stephen's Gate, or Lion's Gate. St. Stephen's Gate because right outside here is where Stephen was stoned. Lion's Gate because of the lions that are on it, put here by Suleiman the Magnificent. As we enter the gate, we look to the left and there's the northern gate into the Temple Mount. We can't take this. If you notice, there's a guard there. Only Muslims can enter the gates other than the one up the ramp that we'll take in a few days. And now it's time to head to the pool of Bethesda down the road into the old city. And all along the way, Corinne is trying to herd Alan Deering along from taking pictures. There's a beautiful garden at the Pool of Bethesda, and so we'll look at it a little bit as we sit and wait on restroom breaks. We have our devotion and reading in the shade, and then we head over to the Pool of Bethesda. And now it's time to go to the Pool of Bethesda, the sheep pools. They were built about 200 BC and would have been here in the time of Jesus. And this is from the model at the Israeli Museum, what they might have looked like. But only this small portion has actually been excavated. This is a rather difficult area to understand as you look at the ruins, so let's explain. This is the pool area today. The red area would have been the Byzantine church built here, and it includes all the arches that are down into the pool. And in the blue area would have been where they built the Crusader church on top of those ruins, and you can see St. Anne's Church in the bottom right. And this red area you're looking at here was actually a pagan healing area to scapulars. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So now as we look at the ruins, you can see the arches that are from the Byzantine church, and the part above that is the chapel that was built by the Crusaders. And now we're looking at the part that was a scapulous sanctuary, and on around we come to the Church of St. Anne. The cult of Asclepius was a healing cult. You would go down into caves and spend the night there praying that gods would heal you. Maybe you would make a small image of what you're trying to heal, like a foot or a leg, and they would heal that for you. The biggest question is, why was there a pagan healing area in a Jewish city? And this is where we get the doctor symbol. Two snakes twined around a pole, one for healing, one for hurt. This column was from the Byzantine church that was here over this area. Next we come to look at the Church of St. Anne. A Byzantine church was here in 438, destroyed, and in 1140 the Crusaders built this present structure, which was turned into a Muslim seminary at one time. And then in 1856, Napoleon bought it and gave it to the church. The church was built to mark the home of Anne and Joachim, the parents of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And here's a statue of her and her mother. And now it's time to walk back out to St. Stephen's Gate and down the hill to our bus. We drive around the western wall of the old city near the Jaffa Gate and head to get something to eat. We'll be eating at the Beit Atanor restaurant. And then it's time to do a little more shopping. Maybe we're shopping a little too much. How are we going to get all of this in our suitcases? But this store has antiquities, for it's an antiquity license dealer. And then around to Mount Zion and a picture with some of the soldiers there. The first structure that we come to is Dormition Abbey, built in 1906 to remember the home of Mary after the resurrection, at least highly traditional. There's also several other churches built here over the years. It's a really beautiful church on the inside if we had time to look, but down in the crypt is where Mary supposedly fell asleep, and around her medallions of Judas, Eve, Jael, Ruth, Esther, and Miriam, heroes of the Bible, women heroes. And now it's time to head to the upper room. Both the upper room and the traditional tomb of David are located in this building with the minaret on it. As we walk up to this room, we need to remember that in 75 AD, a Judeo-Christian synagogue was here called the Church of the Disciples. And then later on in 1105, the Crusaders built the present-day structure. In 1552, it was changed into a Turkish mosque, and in 1980, it was given back to the Christians. The structure on the inside right now is a Crusader structure, but it's the same space that the upper room would have been in, most people believe. It's an authentic site. And part of the outside wall seems to still be part of that old Judeo-Christian synagogue, the Church of the Disciples. As said before, at one time it was turned into a mosque, and this marks the spot where you pray to Mecca. But now it's restored to the Christians. One of the interesting ornaments is pelicans. It was believed in the Crusader time that pelicans pecked their breasts to bring blood forward to feed their babies. And this is the outside of the structure. Many archaeologists believe those stones to the right of the window, the rough ones, were part of a Judeo-Christian synagogue that was here and part of the original first century building. And now we head downstairs, for that is where the traditional tomb of David is. This tomb of David is a highly traditional place because the Bible says he was not buried here on Mount Zion, but in the city of David, which is another hill. But it's a good place to come, and it has been established since 1176 as the place to pray to David by the Jewish authorities. Over in the old city of David, there has been a site that many believe is the tomb of David. There's a royal tomb there that doesn't say David on it, but many people think that's what it is. There's sites for men and women, since both men and women do not worship together in the Jewish religion. Many believe these niches in the back of the tomb are from that old ancient church of the Christians. And this is not a menorah, notice 9, not 8. A menorah has 7. This is Hanukkah. And while leaving here, we run into David himself. Wow, he sure has lived a long time. And now we head over to the Zion Gate. As we go along, we see more soldiers who are off on vacation here for a while. When we come to the gate, we see it's pockmarked with bullet holes. This was the line between the Jewish and the Arab forces after the War of Independence. And during the 7-Day War, they captured this area by attacking through this gate. And this is what the inside looks like of this gate. Now we'll be splitting forces. Some will take a taxi over to the Western Wall, and some will walk through the Jewish quarter and see the Cardo and other sites. The Cardo was the main street through Jerusalem in the time of Jesus, with shops on each side. Looks something like this, and would have been very busy. Nowadays, it's a modern shopping area. And there's still many soldiers. They come here in order to see the sights, because many of them never traveled around their country. And at 18, 19 years old, they're now learning their history. Next, come to Hezekiah's Broad Wall in the Jewish quarter. Here's an interesting structure found when they were doing excavations here. This was Hezekiah's city, but when the northern kingdom was destroyed, the people moved south, and he added to his city in order to build up so they could come and live here. And this is the area you can see today. The wall was built over his own citizens' homes by tearing them down to make the structure. So in other words, he built a wall out of his citizens' homes to have a place for refugees to live. And now the group that took the taxi is joined by the group that went through the Jewish quarter as they come through the checkpoint. This is where the Western Wall is. The red area is 30 feet above street level in Jesus' day. For almost 2,000 years, only a small area was available for the Jewish people. They came here on a regular basis to mourn the destruction of their temple, thus it became known as the Wailing Wall. But then once the Jews captured this area, they destroyed the houses and made an open plaza, and that's what we have today. This is the ramp going up to the Temple Mount. We'll go up there in a few days. On the right side is where the women pray. I once asked a Jewish rabbi, why are women on the right and men on the left? He says, more shade on the left. This wall is 15 feet thick. And remember, you're 30 feet above street level in Jesus' day and 68 feet above bedrock. We're on a large tail, just like that tail we were at Megiddo. As you go into the men's side, you can get phylacteries and prayer shawls if you need them for your prayer time. And everyone's head must be covered by something, a yarmulke or a hat. And then it's time to approach the wall and be ready to pray and seek the Lord in this special place. It is special because it's the closest place you can come to where the temple would have been without walking on top of the Temple Mount. To the left on the men's side is an indoor synagogue where we can pray also. People leave prayers in the cracks in the wall. This wall is kind of complicated. The lower section, 20 feet below this in this area, is made by Herod the Great. Then the area above that was repaired by the Muslims when they built the dome of the rock on top to keep it from falling down. And then the Turks add this area to keep people from falling off the wall. Actually, the bottom of this red area is ground level inside. While the group who rode in the taxis was waiting, they were able to see some bat mitzvahs, coming of age of young girls, being celebrated by their friends. And then it's time to walk over to the Archaeology Museum and the Southern Temple Mount excavations. First, we watch a movie to get a little bit of an orientation about what we're going to be seeing. And then we head down to the actual excavations themselves. We're going to be looking first at this area called Robinson's Arch, and then we're going to move over to the teaching steps. As we come out, the Muslims are having their call to prayer. The Umayyad rulers from Egypt used stones from the Temple Mount destruction to build palaces for themselves at the southern end of the Temple Mount. And now we're at street level in Jesus' day. Notice the huge stones pushed down by the Romans from up above that pretty well destroyed the street. Would have looked like this in Jesus' day, a bustling, busy place. When it was found, it looked like this and had to be excavated. And now we're standing there under Robinson's Arch. This arch spring that we see above our head would have looked like this in the time of Jesus. Only the yellow still exists today, but it would have looked like this. You can kind of imagine it. And underneath it would have been stores. You know, they sold trinkets like I attended Pentecost in 2020. And above it was this place, very important, the place of the trumpeting. From here, they blew the trumpet to announce the morning had begun and the time of the sacrifice. And you can see here the place of the trumpeting. It would have looked like this. From the place of the trumpeting, we moved down to these stairs, and we look at them as they went up over the stores that would have lined this side of the street. There would have been stores all along here. And then on this side there would have been more steps and more stores. As you can see from this picture of that corner, it would have been a joyful time during the festivals. Now moving from here, we're going to go over to the step. This area out here is where the Umayyad palaces would have been built so that they could access the Al-Aqsa Mosque easier. Looks something like this. We can also see stone moving equipment. Moving on ahead, we come to an area of Byzantine homes. They're underground now because, again, remember, layers upon layers. We're not going to get to explore them, but they would have looked like this. Very beautiful homes with mosaic floors and ovens and some reconstruction done, if we could go look. We're going to head through the doors and over to the teaching steps. And there's a pair of doves. Aren't they beautiful? These are called the teaching steps. They would have been the main way into and out of the temple in the time of Jesus. Teachers would sit out here and teach. There were mikveh baths here also. Up one side and down the other, there's a broken millstone in it. The steps were very hard. It's almost impossible to run up them. You can see how she struggles with the steps.
Not the easiest steps in the world.
The reason it's hard to run up them is some are high, some are low, some are wide, some are narrow. They're made that way so you have to actually think when you approach God. You can't just go or you'll fall flat on your face. The people would have entered the triple gate on the right and exited the double gate on the left. That is, unless they were in mourning. Then they reversed it. Here you can see the old and new steps. The worn out ones are from 2,000 years ago. The triple gates have been sealed now. You would have walked in these gates and through a tunnel up into the Temple Mount. It's still there, but you just can't use it now. And this is put here to remind you there still are earthquakes here, and they still do damage just a few years ago. And now it's time to call day 6 to an end.